It's just gotten much darker and slightly windy and cold, and I think it's going to rain. But I wanted to get this live stream out, so if it rains, we'll deal with that. But something really surprising just happened. I guess maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was. A lot of people remember about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I had a meeting with Felix Sater. Maybe people hadn't heard of Felix Sater before that. I first started talking about Felix in a way that got his attention. Well, I first started talking about him maybe, I don't know, 2 years ago or more. I first learned of the guy when I retained a lawyer named Jonathan Snyder to represent my company in the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences versus Multimedia System Design, Inc., DBA Crowdsource the Truth. I've said it many times. That's a fake corporate entity that was created by George Webb's brother, and I allege he did that to deceive me into thinking that a company that I used to own was getting sued and that I could be financially liable for, a loss or a default judgment or something like that. So I contacted, one of the few attorneys that I knew at the time. I contacted Larry, I think, and he said he didn't know anybody who was licensed in New York. So I contacted Jared Beck, and he introduced me to Jonathan Snyder. Now remember, Jared Beck had been introduced to me a few years prior. Not really introduced per se, but I never heard of Jared Beck before George Webb told me about him. And so it's possible that that was a setup. It seems likely, in fact. I don't want to go into the details of Jared Beck's behavior that caused me to believe he's a duplicitous social engineer and a liar. And his wife is too. That's what I think. That's what I've been able to determine from evaluating their public behavior. But it was Jared Beck who introduced me to Jonathan Snyder. And the three of us had a fairly lengthy conference call discussing this case, during which I explained that this was not a real company, and also that I hadn't been served yet. Any first year at a law school DUI attorney will tell you, if you haven't been served, don't do anything, because you haven't been sued. This is just somebody, sending around letters and making a lot of noise. Until you're served with the lawsuit, there's nothing going on. But they didn't say that. Jared, I remember distinctly, I wish I had recorded that conversation, but I remember it was like I was a patient on a bed and two doctors were talking about what they were going to do to me. And they said, well, their plan on that phone call was for Jason to come up with $5,000 to pay Snyder, and for Snyder to just do a motion to dismiss. By the way, also any attorney who's not a moron or trying to deceive you would not get into an arrangement like that, because they would say, look, I can't do that. I can't get into a retainer situation with you when you're telling me you only have $5,000, because we know it's not going to ever be just a motion to dismiss. There's going to be some follow-up to that, and there's going to be, no lawyer is getting involved in something for $5,000 like this. Every serious law firm that I've ever spoken to says, they say this also kind of in a way that they're saying that don't even bother. They say that if you've got a lawsuit in district court that's expected to go to trial, it's a minimum of a $100,000 retainer. Because what they're basically saying is, if you don't have $100,000 to give us right now, you're not, serious about this. You're not going to be in this. Anyway, the point is, Snyder represented me. After Jared Beck and that initial phone call, I said to him, look, a $5,000 motion to dismiss isn't going to do it. I want to really fight this because of all the reasons. But Snyder did not take any of my instruction. He told me it didn't matter that they sued a fake company, when in fact it did. And even if it didn't, he didn't raise the defense that 47 USC section 230 would preclude them from suing the company for something that I did, or suing me for, I mean, the company had nothing to do with it, is what it came down to, and all that Snyder did was axle wrap the whole lawsuit to the point that it was a mess, and then withdraw. But it was interesting because I went to court today. He's representing Felix Sater, and he was representing Felix Sater then. So during the Emmys versus MSDI, which is the fake company, MSD is my company, but during that, course of that whole lawsuit, Snyder told me that he represents Felix Sater. He kind of boasted about it because, remember, we knew that Valerie Caproni had been the FBI general counsel, and we didn't understand, or at least I didn't understand the implications of that at the time. We just thought, oh, this is like some, tough lady with an FBI background who, it was all kind of a joke at that point, sort of the way Sater's stupid lawyer, what's his name? Tom Sema. He said a bunch of stupid stuff today. So I'm going to play this whole assault encounter, but people have seen the images. If you're following me on Twitter, on X, I posted this image just as I was leaving the courthouse. People can follow me at JG_CSTT. This is just a screen capture from the video. I was in court listening in the gallery. I mean, it's a public thing. You can just go to the hearing and kind of, it's supposed to be your trial in front of the public, right? So I just want to kind of wrap my brain around what the hell this trial is all about, because it's too weird that Valerie Caproni was originally the judge, and then the plaintiffs, which are the city of Almaty, Kazakhstan, and here's Snyder assaulting me. Ooh, that's nice. They've changed something. Now I can change the background image while I'm in the foreground. That's pretty cool. But I mean, this guy was my lawyer, and he just assaulted me. He just engaged, maybe not in the crime of assault, but certainly the intentional tort. I mean, I wasn't injured. It seems to me, and I don't know, that the breakdown between the cops and the lawyers in terms of what is assault is that there's different degrees, and the cops won't do anything about an assault unless you're actually injured, and also they gauge the degree of injury. I mean, if a woman slaps a man in the face, I don't think they would consider that assault that they'll do anything about. Flip the roles and they're going to arrest the guy. But the point of the matter is, you can sue someone for the intentional tort of assault even if they just bump you with their chest or make you feel like you're about to be injured. They certainly did that. They bumped me, they stepped on me, Felix Sater slapped me. I mean, you can see it in the thumbnail. He's such a girly bitch. This guy thinks he's going to Afghanistan and negotiating with the Mujahideen, and he slaps me like a little girl. He's pathetic. But anyway, this tough guy, who I knew would be a cowardly little bitch if we ever met on even ground, absolutely was. I went to court today, like I said, because I'm trying to understand what the hell is going on in this case. I have a sense for what's going on, not in terms of the pleadings, as lawyers and Larry used to tell me, focus on the pleadings. I'm trying to decipher the lawfare aspect. What are these guys really trying to do with this lawsuit? And I think I'm getting closer, because they got super duper upset today at me just being there in court. And I tell you, initially, I wasn't even planning on approaching them. I was in back. I entered, not first thing in the morning. I sort of slipped in there and made sure that they couldn't really see me. I mean, the lawyers and Felix Sater, they're facing forward, but you learn so much just from being in the courtroom that you cannot get, even if they had video cameras on the witness and all that. I'm evaluating Felix Sater. I'm evaluating Jonathan Snyder. They look nervous as hell. The witness today was this guy named Mr. Sadikov or something like that, who is a Kazakhstani guy who he said they flew him here just to testify. Oh wow. So there's the first homeless guy I've seen on the High Line. Someone's going to get that guy thrown out. I think. But so they're interviewing, they're cross-examining this guy, and it's, Boys Schiller Flexner represents the city of Almaty, Kazakhstan, and these three losers represent Felix Sater. Now that makes sense. Felix is an individual guy. He's not a bank or a city. And this is the kind of lawyers that individual people usually have. This just shines a spotlight on the strangeness of Chris Boozy being represented by Ballard Spahr. That makes zero sense. I mean, unless, Chris Boozy has secret billions that we don't know about. Individual people like me, Felix Sater, Chris Boozy, we don't get big white shoe 100-year-old law firms to represent us in absolute loser cases. Something else was going on with Chris Boozy, and I'm not sure what the something else that's going on with Felix Sater is. I don't have enough evidence here yet to form a really strong hypothesis, but of course I do have some sense. You get this intuition. It's not court submissible evidence, of course, but maybe it'll tell us something. Anyway, they're just adamantly denying any knowledge of involvement of Valerie Caproni. Isn't that weird? That's what I was asking him about in the park, and that was when Tom Sema ended the conversation. Now, Tom Sema had a much different temperament when I saw him today. So let's talk about what happened in court, because I obviously don't have any videos of that. People are going to be able to see the assault and the encounter. People who are already sponsoring the show, who are people who I know, take this information seriously, care about me in the way you care about another person who you don't know, but you don't want to see something bad happen to them. Everybody who is on here saying oh, if this is important, you'd put it out for free. They don't care if I lose my livelihood, if this show goes away, if I go to jail. Decent people who enjoy and are entertained by this or learn things from it, they don't want to see something bad happen to me, and so they become sponsors. I'm not going to entertain any nonsense from the Julie Lewises and the George's brothers and the other idiots out there who obviously want me to put this video out so that they can see it. They're going to have to pony up either $3 on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, or $5 on Substack, on Subscribestar, or Patreon. And I think you're going to find it interesting. There's a lot of people who are like, you're a reporter, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that, you're not supposed to become the story. I'm not trying to become the story, but I'm also not here telling you, hey, I'm a reporter, I'm a journalist, I'm trying to get a Pulitzer Prize, I'm trying to go to Columbia School of Journalism. No, none of that. I take the same approach to this type of reporting on the reality of New York City that I took to creating 3D. Obviously, I didn't invent stereoscopic cinema. There was a lot of it around before I got started, but only some of it was good and a lot of it was very bad. So I started to form my own ideas about how it should be done. And guess what? Today, much of that stuff is industry standard. Interesting. Because, like 3D movies, journalism is a construct of humankind, and we're fallible. So just because this is the way it's been being done for 50 years or 100 years or even 1,000 years, I don't give a shit. This is how I'm doing it. And I'm going right to court, and I'm asking these dopes, why did you lie to me about Valerie Caproni's involvement? Do people ever say, they say that dog owners and dogs kind of look connected?
This is fake.
You're from Australia?
No, I mean,
good on you. Have a nice day. Whoop. It's a cool dog. That dude matches the dog. I think people have said that it's because people tend to select a dog that they see some aspect of themselves in. Anyway, point is, obviously, if I don't meet people's preconceived notion of what a journalist is supposed to be, I'm not trying to be a journalist. I'm a guy who's trying to find answers to questions, and to the extent that there's journalism involved, okay. But I went to the court to ask them, you okay? Got a balance problem happening. Let's see if we can get it together. Last time that guy sat down, he fell right off the edge. I really want to know why, how could Tom Sema not know that Valerie Caproni was presiding over this, even if he wasn't representing Sater at the time? Don't you read the whole entire file if you're a lawyer and understand I mean, that seems pretty significant that it started with one judge and then she was ousted. It was motion from Boyce Schiller Flexner that got her off of there. And I mean, we'd have to go, this is the city of Almaty, Kazakhstan versus Felix Sater. It's public stuff. You can look it up on Pacer. Have we ever had that clear of a view of the hockey thing? That's the upstairs of the NHL store. If you like hockey, that's a real cool thing. And that's actually a pretty good idea to put it there because Madison Square Garden is right there and that's where all the hockey is going on. What is that? MasterCard Midnight Theater. Danny Lipschitz. What is that, like a comedy club? Weird. See, that's what I mean. There's certain aspects of this that are nice, but it just feels like a fake neighborhood. Stick a comedy club in here. I mean, this, I don't know. It's just super Vegas-y. It doesn't seem, these things to me seem like they were created to imitate New York. I don't know, everything is an imitation now. But anyway, my initial plan was to just listen to what's being said in court to try to understand why Valerie Caproni was involved and then not involved, and now we've got John Colt is the judge who interestingly is presiding over George's brother's stupid cases against me. So again, I don't know what's going on, but given the background of these individuals and what I do know about them, this is important that I wanted to say. So Jonathan Snyder, he's a terrible lawyer as far as I can tell. He's a dishonest guy and he's an incompetent attorney. When he was cross-examining this Kazakhstani bank witness, first line of questioning was about the fact that the guy had gone to jail for embezzling and that Snyder was trying to establish that embezzlement is a crime of deception. And it seemed like he was trying to get the guy to admit that he was dishonest. But what the guy said was that everybody in his division of the bank had gotten convicted for this particular thing because it had to do with a bunch of loans that were given out to something that had no collateral and no assets and didn't pay back the loans. So what bank would do that? I don't understand exactly how that happened, but the interesting thing that came out, so Snyder's trying to get the guy to admit that he was convicted for embezzling and he's dishonest, and then he was trying to get him to say that the court in Kazakhstan is dishonest because the guy didn't do it. Isn't that right, Mr. Sadakov, or whatever his name was? And it was interesting. The guy would not admit that the court jammed him up for something that he didn't do. He was saying things like, well, I'm not a lawyer, and this was the court's determination, and I suppose I must have done something because I was convicted, and all these other people were convicted. And then he also went into the fact that this guy got involved in a plea deal where he signed the plea deal and they reduced his 15-year sentence to 9 months. And then he was cooperating with the investigators. But just didn't go well. Snyder, he wasn't able to get the answers from the guy that he wanted, and he kept coming out from behind the podium and kind of like not closely approaching, but even going an inch closer toward the witness, I think doesn't seem like what they're wanting you to necessarily do. And so the judge had to tell him, Mr. Snyder, stand behind the podium. I mean, that's fine, I guess, if you're in 5th grade or it's your first lawsuit, but it seemed it wasn't good. And what's interesting is every time this idiot appeared before Caproni, he was getting yelled at by her. Now, to some extent, I felt with Caproni, particularly in retrospect, that she was doing it to make it seem like Snyder is not helping her. But I am now operating under the hypothesis, and again, none of this has been proven in court yet. I don't know. These are my opinions, theories that I have formed in my own mind, coming to these purely opinion conclusions based on public domain evidence and my interactions with these people. I could be wrong. They might have another explanation. We might have an opportunity to hear it. But I currently believe that Jonathan Snyder is working with and for Andrew Weissman, Valerie Caproni, the whole FBI set that doesn't want people to know about this secret agreement between Felix Sater and Andrew Weissman. Remember how bent out of shape retired General Michael Flynn got about this conversation that I had with Andrew Weissman at NYU Law when Weissman was given a stupid podcast lecture? And he denied knowing Felix Sater, despite having signed 2 agreements with the guy, one in 1998 that was secret until 2019, and also mentioning him 11 times in his book, and specifically saying that he told Robert Mueller to bring in Felix Sater as a cooperating witness. It sounds like he knows him pretty well. Knows him by name, and it's the first guy he thinks of when they're trying to jam up Trump. Sater said some stuff about that today. There were a bunch of people after the first Felix Sater interview. A lot of people have advice for me. Usually not regular viewers, usually not people who value Crowdsource the truth and understand what's going on. It's usually some dope who's just turned on the show either for the first time or some social engineer who's trying to be a problem for me. But they're like, oh, she was ready to talk to you. He was gonna make an appointment for an interview next week. You should have said this, you should have done that. Now, did we know that there was a magnolia right there? That's new. I didn't know about that. So if you want some excellent cupcakes very close to my apartment, and look, there's really not a line at this one. Normally there's a crazy huge line for Magnolia. I have to admit, they do make excellent cake. Cupcakes and whatnot. I don't really feel like eating any cake right now. But that's a damn good bakery. Oh look, there's the Army.
Oh, no, sorry, here.
Ready to shoot. So, yeah, Snyder was cross-examining this guy. In my opinion, he did a terrible job, and it did not seem to be swaying the jury. Now, when I was watching Snyder, before he began his cross-examination, he was shifting in his seat. He appeared nervous. He's lost a lot of weight since the last time I saw him, but didn't look like he was like going to the gym. He didn't look like this healthy kind of weight loss. Maybe he's using Ozempic or who knows, but it just, his suit was hanging off of him, badly fitting, and it looked worn out and old. I don't even think he's as old as me. Snyder might not even be 50. But it was a pathetic showing, because then towards the end of the cross-examination, they were talking about this guy. This is what Snyder let out that was super important. So the bank that they were talking about, and we got to go to the transcript will be out for this, and you know, who knows when, and people can go and read on Pacer. But this bank that they were talking about had apparently been acquired in an auction in the 90s. And I said, wait a minute. That sounds a hell of a lot like the story that Lee has told us about Mikhail Khodorkovsky and how he somehow got a bank and messed with the auction and used that to buy Yukos oil, or no, the bank was handling the auction for Yukos oil. It's just, for some reason, the fact that Snyder mentioned that and it didn't seem to have anything to do with anything that's something that's on his mind. And it caused me to think that maybe this whole entire episode with the bank in Kazakhstan, who's fucking doing all that honking? Is it the Mercedes? What a bitch. But it's obviously on his mind, and it just makes me think that maybe this whole entire Kazakhstan deal is to do with this whole plundering of the former Soviet Union after Perestroika, when it had collapsed. And I wonder if Felix Sater and Jonathan Snyder's involvement isn't to protect wealthy, powerful Americans who benefited from that plundering of these former Soviet republics. In fact, I think it is. And until I figure out something better or somebody explains something that makes more sense, I think that's what's going on. And the fact that they got so upset, people are going to really enjoy this encounter with Felix Sater and his attorneys, Jonathan Snyder and Tom Sema. Snyder used to be my attorney. I'm going to be playing this encounter with the three of them right after this. So if you're already a sponsor on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth or crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, you'll be able to watch that. And if you aren't already a sponsor, now is a great time to become one. Look at this, a new luxury building in this incredibly shitty, already graffitied. The building I don't think is even open yet. And then we got people moving into the vestibule. This is a construction site. And people are trying to break in to use the bathroom. Wow. So yeah, I think there's something very crooked going on in that court. And it's just interesting that Judge Caproni was trying to handle the case, even though it obviously wasn't the proper way for it to be handled, because it got reassigned to Judge Colt. And like I said, Judge Colt is also presiding over George's brother's cases against me, which seems like a remarkable coincidence. This guy's not even looking as he's driving right towards me, about to kill me. But yeah, Felix Sater assaulted me, which seemed like a very poor decision. And even worse decision, Jonathan Snyder assaulted me. He's an attorney. So again, I think they have to be pretty upset about whatever my presence there represents for them to become so unhinged. You know, these are adults. You would hope that they're able to control themselves. And I mean, it's not like we were, what is that? Danger? Some kind of weird van there. G.I. Joe, Danger 2 HQ, what is this? G.I. Joe. I don't know. Haymaker is busy. It smells good. They were super nervous. So when okay, I wasn't originally going to even approach them. I just wanted to listen to what's going on, to try to understand, like, why the hell are all these people who are involved in my case involved in this? And so they called for a break. And I said, well, let me get out of this room immediately so they don't see me here. And I ducked out of the courtroom and I went into the bathroom and hung out in a stall for, I used the bathroom, and then I hung out in the stall for a little while thinking, I'll wait and then go back in there. And then I went in the hallway after a short amount of time, and Felix Sater was standing right there. So basically, it was blown. They knew I was there. And I said, Felix, how you doing? And he just immediately got nervous. The elevator doors opened, and he said, after you. And I said, oh no, I'll ride with you. And he said, no, I'll wait for the next one. I said, well, then I'll wait too. Then he said, stop following me or I'm going to get the court officer. And I said, I'm not following you. This is a public building and I'm in the elevator lobby. Go get the court officer. So then he ran down the, just the stairs. So whatever, I went back into the courtroom and sat there. And then they all walked back in. And then, there was more cross-examination of that guy, and then it ended. So I left, and I figured, well, all right, these guys now knew I was here, so let me wait outside and I'll see if they'll talk to me. And that's what everybody is going to see in the sponsor exclusive segment that's coming up right after this, just a few short minutes from now. It's my conversation with Jonathan Snyder. I ask him all about Valerie Caproni. I ask Felix Sater about, was he General Michael Flynn's translator? I mean, that seems obvious, right? If he was some big, tough Russian guy who had been in the military, and it would make sense that he knows stuff about Afghanistan and Russian military stuff, perhaps. But he's just obviously a Brooklyn public school dope. He's just a regular New York guy, not very different from me. I mean, look, I'm not some kind of tough guy. I'm not beating up people on the street, and neither is he. But the point is, when I met him in the park, he's puffing himself up so ridiculously. The guy's a liar, and the contrast of how nervous he was to even just be in the same public hallway with me. And it's not like a dark alley where I'm going to take out a gun or do something to him. The building is filled with cops and cameras. I mean, I wouldn't do anything to the guy, but he knows. I don't have any weapons. He doesn't have any weapons. I don't have any electronic stuff. We're in a court building. It's like the most neutral, I'm just here to talk to you. And he just freaked out. So then, the freak out outdoors, I really give those morons the satisfaction of being on the video, skateboarding, teenage dopes. Anyway, that's basically it. Jonathan Snyder. Oh, I almost forgot the most hilarious part of this. So I texted Snyder immediately after this dual assault, and I said, get ready to lose your law license, stupid. That was a big mistake. And I'm not joking. So he writes back an hour plus after that, meaning he's been on the phone with Tom Sema. They're aware that this is not something that they wanted to have happen. How should we handle this moving forward? Jason's kind of a loose cannon because he's angry at John. And John, he's one of these guys who always wants to try. He's a lawyer. He's trying to smooth it over, and he knows he's in a lot of trouble if I actually put this into action. So he says, Jason, I think you're a nice guy, and I think you're doing what you believe is the right thing. I actually admire your journalism and your tenacity. However, you're not allowed to accost my client on the street and call him a scumbag right in front of me. Why not? What disallows that? And he provoked it by saying and doing things to me, by assaulting me. If you do it again, I'm going to raise the issue with the judge. So I love it when people threaten me with things that I actually want to have happen. You should raise this with the judge, John Snyder. I'm curious to know what he thinks about Felix Sater assaulting me for asking why he and his lawyers lied to me about their knowledge of Valerie Caproni's involvement. Why would that provoke him to assault me? And also the three of them menacing me, maybe not the three of them, but certainly Snyder and Sater. Snyder physically assaulted me as well. So I think Tom Sema, although he's also an idiot for involving himself with these two, and the things that he said are quite stupid, don't have anything to do with anything I've ever said. But I have a feeling he probably sat down with Snyder and said, this problem just got worse. We need to make it less worse. Make it better than bad. And he's failing because Jonathan Snyder is an incompetent idiot who is also digging himself into a much deeper hole. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. You don't want to miss this next segment. Again, I apologize to people who are in a financial situation that prevents them from sponsoring the show, but this is a video that all the Julie Lewises and George's brothers and all the idiots in the world are going to want to get their hands on, and they will inevitably, but they're going to have to give me $3 on Odyssey or $5 on the other platforms if they want to troll me with that. You're going to love it. It's a quite a thing. And by the way, people will probably get to see this eventually when it becomes a public record in court. So stupid how you handled yourself today, Jonathan Snyder. It's very stupid of you to steal my money and mishandle my case. But you are an incompetent attorney who engaged in malpractice and now assault. Thanks for watching.